When it comes to YouTube historians, I don't think anyone is worse than Atun Shei. Atun Shei is a filmmaker who has gained fame through his Checkmate Lincolnite videos in which he debunks various misconceptions about the Civil War. Most of his video is just him arguing with himself and citing a bunch of YouTube comments over things he disagrees with about the Civil War, which of course boils down to thinking the Confederacy was the worst thing to have ever happened and was just a bunch of white supremacists who hated black people and ate babies or something. Needless to say, his videos are full of the same leftist talking points and propaganda we hear in high school and college every single year. And today I'm addressing a point from his first video that he brings up throughout his series, in which he makes two major claims.
The United States was founded on the principles of liberal democracy. The Confederacy was founded to preserve and expand the institution of slavery.
He is wrong on both accounts, unsurprisingly. Let's start off with the point of the US being a liberal democracy, because this is probably the most annoying and obnoxious phrase that the left will use. Like most things with the left, they will cite something as being good and not provide any argumentation as to why it is a good thing, and democracy is one of them. They then try to use the tactic of most people on the political right in citing the founders, that they wanted a true democracy, and that if you're against democracy, then you're a racist or something. This is despite the fact that, well, most men couldn't even vote in early America. It's honestly difficult to say when even over 50% of men were able to vote in the United States. But even then, finding quotes of the founders stating that the United States was not a democracy is not difficult. The founders understood that democracy was essentially just mob rule, and mob rule was dangerous. Of course, the French believed in true democracy, and it led to the Reign of Terror and the massacre of thousands in France, eventually spinning into the Napoleonic Wars. Virtually everything the left complains about with the US government of being undemocratic was intended. The Electoral College is the biggest example. Yes, it's undemocratic, and yes, it was designed that way. The founders did not want a few large states to control the entire country. This is also why we have a Senate with flat representation rather than proportional representation. And in fact, the Senate was originally less democratic, not even being elected directly by the people, but instead indirectly through state legislatures. It wasn't until 1913, with the passing of the 17th Amendment, that senators were instead elected via popular vote. So I don't understand why the left and Atun Shei will continue to parrot this lie that the founders wanted a liberal democracy, especially since Atun Shei himself admitted in a later video that it was all a sick joke.
The United States was founded on principles of the Enlightenment. Liberal democracy, personal liberty, equality for all, even if, for a lot of Americans, those ideals were and are a sick joke.
On to his second point, he is also wrong that the Confederacy's sole purpose was to preserve and extend slavery. Now yes, slavery was certainly a reason for secession. It was a major reason for many states. However, it was not the sole reason, and throughout the war, independence was shown to be more important than slavery, as there were several attempts by the Confederacy to abolish slavery to gain support from Britain and France. Moreover, if he wants to claim that the Confederacy was somehow a huge ideological shift from the United States, it's incredibly strange that the Confederate Constitution is a near word-for-word copy of the US Constitution with some changes here and there. One that everyone will bring up is the fact that the Confederate Constitution explicitly uses the word slavery several times, which is certainly true. However, the spirit of the US Constitution, as it was originally written, maintained. An example of this is that in Article 4 of the US Constitution, it explicitly states that no person held in service or labor can essentially escape to another state and be freed. Let's be real, when it says person of service or labor, it basically means slave. Of course, abolitionists tried to weasel their way out of it by saying that because it's not explicitly saying the word slave, that slaves could escape. And the Confederate Constitution took that clause and just simply added slave in front of it. People also make the claim that the reason the Civil War happened was because the Confederates wanted to expand slavery into the Western Territory. Never mind the fact that many Western territories already allowed slavery, such as Utah, and the Supreme Court already ruled that the federal government could not ban slavery in Western territories, but simply transferring slaves from one part of a country to another is not expanding slavery. You still have the same number of slaves, and those number of slaves were not going to rapidly increase because there was no more slave trade by that point. The transatlantic slave trade was already abolished and was agreed to by the majority of Southern politicians. Moreover, it's incredibly strange that if the Confederacy did want to expand slavery, that they would prohibit the slave trade in their Constitution. Atun Shei also tries to make the claim that the Cornwall Amendment being rejected by the Confederacy proves the Civil War was about slavery and about the expansion of slavery, even though the Cornwall Amendment would have also protected slavery in the Western territories. The real reason they rejected it is simply because they wanted independence, and if anything, the Cornwall Amendment showed that the North did not understand the Constitution, as the Cornwall Amendment was, simply put, redundant. The Constitution implicitly stated that the federal government could not abolish slavery, so why even have the Cornwall Amendment to protect slavery? He also ignores the fact that the Confederate Constitution did not codify slavery as a legal protection. Now, people will say that the Confederate Constitution stated that no bill could be passed to prohibit slavery, and that is true, but that only applied for the federal government, not the state governments. State governments in the Confederacy could end slavery if they so chose. But this was just the Confederate Constitution, again, making the implicit intentions of the US Constitution more clear. Of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. He makes many more blatantly false claims and utilizes cherry-picking and outright lies throughout his video series to try to spin his narrative. But if you want to see me debunk those claims, leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.